and welcome everyone to Revitalize Portland Coalition's very first Revive and Thrive PDX Renaissance Podcast.
I'm excited.
My name is Michael Hironimus. I'm a board member here at RPC, and we're so grateful for everyone that's come in and in person in attendance. In the future, we'll have all of these podcasts online, but the board decided to have this podcast in person because the Multnomah County District Attorney's race is such an incredibly important election for both the future of the county as well as downtown Portland. So we're very fortunate to have Mr. Nathan Vasquez here to discuss a variety of topics. We'll get into policy and community engagement. We'll get into some social unrest and property and violent crime reduction. So Nathan, thanks for being here today.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat and just have this conversation.
Good. Well, thanks. Well, let's start off with a little more of a broad question, and then we'll get into some more specifics. So, as the new Multnomah County DA, what are you going to prioritize in terms of, getting into the office after the election?
Well, there's two big things I like to talk about here, and when I know we're going to talk a lot more about this, but really at the top, what the whole community is dealing with right now is this idea of kind of the unending open-air drug use and open-air drug dealing, and that's going to be a huge priority to deal with that. And it's, I believe, incumbent upon the District Attorney's Office to be really a central partner and player in this area, because it's something that I think is weighing heavy on our community. It's weighing us down as a community, and sadly, I know I'm stating the obvious here, but people are dying every single day. They're out there, and if we are truly that compassionate community that we fashion ourselves to be, we need to actually take some real steps to change, and so that's going to be a priority. And I believe that the District Attorney's Office, it needs to be the leader here. We need to be out front. We need to be helping, directing, and that comes in two very, very direct forms. One is helping individuals who are suffering with substance abuse disorder, the people with addiction on the streets, helping them get connected to treatment, actually doing the work, leaning in, working with all partners across the board, but really focusing on how do we get those individuals into treatment, as opposed to what we're doing now, which is we're very much hands off, just let's see what happens on the streets, and we're seeing how terribly that's working out. So that's one part, but I'm a firm believer that if we want that to actually work out, if we want these individuals to have a shot at getting through treatment, we can't have a situation where every time they walk out the door, someone's trying to hand them fentanyl. So we have to crack down and crush the cartels that are here, really come after the drug dealers, because that's not happening right now, and it needs to. It needs to be where we have a very dedicated effort, and I have a kind of a 3-point kind of plan of how we do that. There's 3 teams that I'm looking to develop out. It's a very street level approach, mid-level, looking at people that that end up causing someone to overdose and die, and actually making sure those people get prosecuted. And then, of course, working with the U.S. Attorney's Office to having those 2 teams feed up to that 3rd one, and really doing that. Now, I'm sorry to be a little long-winded here, but overall, the other priority really is Portland has suffered in the last 4 years of this kind of feeling of just like there's no rules, there's no accountability. And so it is very much about bringing back accountability, doing it in a compassionate way, but doing things like rebuilding our community courts, having an opportunity to have people come in, held accountable when they do things like break windows or steal, commercial theft, shoplifting, things like breaking into vehicles. We need to have that baseline of accountability in our community so that people feel safe coming downtown, feel safe in the neighborhoods, feel safe going to parks, all of that.
There's been some resistance to drug diversion programs in Multnomah County, and have you considered the potential of working with the new Chief of Police, Bob Day, on creating some type of drug diversion program, similar to what King County, Seattle, Marion County are doing?
Absolutely. I mean, this is where, with the new change in the law, and this is House Bill 4002, it puts in place, the various levels in which this can occur. And the first one is what that we call deflection. It's built in. It's something that I believe, that's what the state has passed. That's what people are talking about. We want. So let's lean into that and actually work on that. And that's something very similar to what we've seen in King County and others. And actually what we're seeing right now here in Portland are bike officers in a very small fashion are really laying the groundwork for this. And this can be done throughout the county, but you have to have that dedicated partnership. You also have to have the buy-in of the everyday officer, and that's key. And this is something that I'm dedicated to, which is rebuilding and repairing that relationship with law enforcement in a manner that actually serves the community. Because what we need and what our community needs is having the officer who is, again, able to get out of the patrol car, make contact with citizens, and actually provide that service that we're hungry for. And when we talk about it in this context, very much it's, hey, there's an individual there that he sees using fentanyl. That officer needs to have not only the ability and the partnership to go out and make that contact, have an opportunity to do what we call deflection, but he actually has to have the support, all the different things. Are there treatment providers? Are there ways to connect? Maybe, and this is one of the things I talk about a lot, is why don't we have an actual app on our phones that can show us where are the treatment centers? What's the availability? What are the different ones? If he encounters a woman who is suffering from domestic violence and is having substance abuse issues, he should be able to go to that app and look up and filter down and say, oh, there's a treatment center that takes survivors of domestic violence that also works on things like drug addiction and things of that nature. And so if we have those tools and we're doing it right, we're going to have the opportunity to have real impacts, have an opportunity to have real influence on those individuals and make real connections. So, I mean, those are all the things that, what I'm looking at, building that support network.
Chief Day is doing a great job of sort of rekindling the morale in the police department, but there's a sense of, especially I have a cousin who's in the Portland Police Department, and there's a sense that if they do their job, but there's not a DA behind them to support them, then what are they doing there, sort of sense, right?
It's something we've been talking a lot about, and it's been rough the past 4 years, and I am very thankful, having worked with Chief Day for 20 plus years, he is a great motivator. But at the end of the day, we can have all the conversations we want with the chief of police and the lieutenants and the commanders. They're great folk. But it is really what matters most, and where the rubber meets the road is out on the street with those patrol officers. You have to have a force that actually believes that now there's a city, community, and a district attorney's office that's there to support them in their mission. And in that, you have to have that everyday partnership. And it's one of the things I'm very proud to say, having done this for over 2 decades, I'm the guy that they call at 2 a.m. I get those phone calls, I answer, we work through problems. They know that when they come to me, I'm going to deliver. And in return, I'm going to have some demands on them. And they know and expect that, which is I want them to get more active, to get out into the community, to make better connections. And if there's issues, of course I'm going to hold them accountable, but they expect that. And they're ready to see us move into a different direction. And they're ready for a leader who wants to be a partner with them. And that's what I'm stepping up to do.
Great. So recently, talk about social unrest a little bit. Portland's back in the news. We had some protests that caused, nearly $1 million in damage from the anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian protests in Portland, which actually were predominantly non-students.
Yeah.
Do you expect the county to arrest more people involved in that, or?
Well, for sure, if those opportunities come up. I mean, this is one that really, it really makes me sad because it affects my family directly. My son, who goes to a local Portland Public High School, he actually used the PSU library extensively, and so he was crushed by this. The fact that now, that library is closed for at least through the year, and I don't know when it's going to open again. It's going to be quite some time. And what's very difficult about this is that those individuals, if you look at some of the ones that were arrested, and certainly I know that lots of them that were involved, are the same folks from 2020. I mean, this is not like a secret. And that's what's, I think, the community as a whole is starting to wake up to and see is like, wait a minute. There are peaceful, wonderful protests in Portland every single day. I guarantee you we can walk out every day in Portland and find a peaceful, wonderful protest. But there is a very dedicated group of individuals out there that want to do destructive actions. And they look to co-opt these events at various times. And this one is a great example. It's a tragic example of what happens when you see this group come in and co-opt it. Having been, a prosecutor who's worked in this field for well over a decade. I was there the night that they lit the Justice Center on fire. I was in the Justice Center on the 13th floor. So this is something that I have worked through and dealt with time and time again. And I know very particularly because I've worked with the officers. Literally, we have been out there and we put on black jackets and the black little face mask and went out and just walked around the crowd to see what it was like. And so I've seen it inside and out, and I've prosecuted, some of those Antifa individuals that, smashed the Oregon Historical Society windows. Those individuals that have, lit fires. And what needs to happen very directly is we need to identify that core group and make sure that it does not go unchecked. You have to, at every turn, hold them accountable.
So what does that mean in terms of your office? Is there something that you can do, I'm thinking kind of like a January 6th inquiry where we can find out, who are these groups that are behind these acts? Because it seems like they're well organized, they're well funded, but nobody really ends up digging into where do these people come from? Because they're not, like I said, they're not PSU students. They're not, a lot of times, they're not even people who are from Portland, right? They're bussed in or what?
Yeah, so it is a very complex problem because when you talk and you look at and you really dig into this, what we call Antifa anarchist movement, they try to keep in very small cells and they try to then come together for certain events. And sadly, Mike Schmidt's protest policy really hurt us here because the opportunity to identify and get involved is very much, in 2020 we had that opportunity. If police had been able to make those arrests and do those things, we could have very clearly identified the people that are coming back now. We identified some, but not that many. And it also is very important because remember, these folks come into court and they're like, oh, I've never done this before. And I'm like, I've seen that person over and over and over. And it's not that we're starting from scratch, but we are starting at a place where, we need to be very active. So I think when it talks about can we get to some sort of January 6th style, there are opportunities. I'm prosecuting a guy right now by the name of Jared Huber, and I can say that because I wrote a PC affidavit that I filed in court on, and he's a guy he's a very avowed, into this. This is his thing. He got arrested again for an arson. It's his second one. And of course, I'm going to do everything I can to work with the U.S. Attorney's Office and others to make sure that he's held accountable. And it's a situation where we have to be looking at all of those individuals that are repeatedly involved in this and taking a different approach. And it has to be an active one because for far too long, we've been, as a prosecutor's office, passive, sat back and said, let's just see what comes to us. An active prosecutor's office in this field, what that means is you work with law enforcement when these events are happening. You are in the front end, helping, making sure that the arrests are, you're putting out, here's the things I need for a good lawful arrest that can lead to a good prosecution. But then you're also then immediately partnering with the U.S. Attorney's Office, and you have to put this stuff in place ahead of time. This isn't, sadly, I'm going to sit here and tell you right now, come to the lead up to November, and after November and January, we're going to see all this again. This is, it's one of those things I know in my bones. I certainly hope we don't see a repeat of 2020, or even 2016. For those of us that were here in 2016 and remember, sadly, when Trump got elected, there was 4 days of riots. And then when Biden got elected, there was a whole day of riots there too when he was inaugurated. So this will happen again. And the only question is, are you going to have a district attorney's office that's going to be out there leading the charge, looking at how do we actually get our arms around this? Because, sadly, Portland's reputation is this is where, a hotbed of this type of activity. And we need to get to a place of, instead, this is a community that is fed up with it, done with it, and is ready to see an absolute end to it. And that's where I'm dedicated to do.
Yeah, so along that vein, Portland has been sort of, whether it's right or not, Portland's been categorized as the protest city. You look at the news and Portland is front and center with a lot of this social unrest. How do we change that image?
Well, we have to take and, embrace that part, which is the wonderful part. We have every day, like I've said, we have wonderful protests, and that's great. We want that. But it is absolutely critical that element that comes here to do violence, to smash windows, to start fires, to attack police officers, we have to confront that and absolutely create just a zero tolerance. This is not what Portland's about, because sadly the reality of that is that it hurts free speech. When you have individuals that have a great message they want to get out, and then these individuals, what I'm going to call the Antifa Black Bloc crowd, come in, they take it over, and it takes their message and it just turns it into violence and destruction, and the underlying message that maybe people will resonate with gets totally lost. And so it has to be one of the community saying enough. And I really see the PSU library as a real potential for a turning point in our community, because what I've heard throughout the entire community is we're done with that. This isn't what we're about. This isn't what we want to be known as. We want to see better for our community, and the last thing we want is some of our really core elements of our community to see them destroyed in such a terrible way, when it just loses the whole message as well.
So I was surprised to see that 31 people were arrested in the PSU thing, which is a kind of a shift, right? DA Mike Schmidt, current DA Mike Schmidt, has recently got this sort of tough policy all of a sudden. Is this a change in policy, or do you think this might have something to do with an election coming up?
I mean, this is absolutely, election politics at its finest. I mean, for those of us that were here in 2020, he announced very clearly that he was not going to prosecute this type of stuff, and all the stuff you see at PSU, all of it would have fallen under his protest policy. And he wants to quietly act like that never happened. In fact, in a debate we recently had, he tried to even say, "Oh no, that was because of COVID." Now, if you go back and read that policy, and that it had nothing to do with COVID, and that was one of the most bald-faced lies I've seen him make. And I'll just say this: that his recent change, his flip-flop on this, is absolutely because that was a failure. It was a horrible failure, and he'll never admit it. I've asked him to multiple times, but it was a huge failure, and he's trying to kind of catch back up or get to a different place. And the sad reality is, we look at PSU, I'll tell you, it could have been done a lot better. Like, the opportunity was there, and we lost it. And it comes down to a lack of leadership, because he doesn't know what he's doing. But in that one, I'll tell you very particularly, what happened is you had folks camping out on the steps, right? And that wasn't getting the reaction they wanted. So then they decided they're going to take over the library and do all this damage. What you didn't have was a leader in the district attorney's office to step up right away and say, look, we need something different. We need to make sure that if they do something like this and take it over, you can't let them come and go from the library, because that was a critical error in this, is that they left. Like, the people that caused that damage, they came and went from the library. So from a criminal prosecution stand, you're never going to be able to fully identify, hey, that person is the one that, spray painted on the wall or broke that window. And so it's that opportunities. We have real opportunities to be involved, to be active, and to make sure that those people are held accountable. But unless you have an experienced DA that's been there and has worked through this, we're going to sadly get that same result, where we had some arrests this time, but if you look at it, most all of those were for criminal trespass. And in that, for low-level misdemeanors, that's just not going to do a whole lot to deter or stop this behavior. And it certainly doesn't account for all the damage and the horrific things they did to that library.
So more great press for Portland. A recent New York Times article highlighted that shooting clusters in Multnomah County between 2020 and 2023, particularly in downtown, between the Burnside and Stark Street corridor, call it from 122nd to 148th, even going into downtown Gresham, right? How do we reduce these violent shootings in these areas? What strategies do you have?
Yeah, I mean, sadly, Portland, we have been an outlier when it comes to gun violence and homicides. We've seen, yes, the rest of the nation has had an upswing, but we've been far above that upswing, and while the rest of the nation has seen a bit of a decline, we still are up high. In fact, I talked about this, that this year in 2024, from January to now, we have had more homicides than Seattle and San Francisco combined, which, I mean, that's a tough place to be. I mean, it really is. It's terrible to watch and see happen. And when we talk about how do we get into a better place, I have a very direct strategy. I built a unit, it's called strategic prosecution. It's one that uses data, exactly what you're talking about, those clusters, and then you pair that with a data analyst, a prosecutor, and then these law enforcement units, and say, okay, let's focus. Let's get really intense on, is it an area? Is it a set of individuals that are driving the violence? Is it a crime subset? And then when you're focusing those resources, you can have and really an outsized impact on those problems. But you have to actually know what the issues are. You can't come back and be in a situation where it's like, hey, we're going to do a study, and 5 years from now we're going to tell you that would have been great to have done 5 years ago. You have to be doing this right now, because for me, from where I sit and my experiences, the urgency is now, because these are lives that are lost. These are families that are destroyed. And this past year in particular, I've prosecuted homicides for over 10 plus years, but this past year was very poignant for me. And working with families where, in particular, there was a young black man that was killed named Nicole Griffin, and just an amazing human being. I got to know his mother. She was wonderful. And it's just, I look at those and I think, why aren't we doing more to say this is a massive crisis and we need to actually stop this now, not study it and think about it in 10 years. We need right now results, and that's what I'm looking to bring.
So this begs the question in terms of police enforcement. Do you feel that Multnomah County Sheriff's Office and Portland PD, Gresham PD, do they have the resources available to them right now to be able to, police these areas or these hotspots, or, just do their jobs in general?
The short answer, of course, is no, there's not enough currently, but let me expand on that in a couple of different ways. Sadly, it comes down to, when you look at, we'll start with the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, the County Commission just asked them to cut their child abuse detective. And I look at that and I think that's one of the most critical areas, and I was shocked by that. And so what I see repeatedly is the Sheriff's Office being asked to take cuts, and it's something where they need to be funded. When we talk about kind of Portland Police, that's another one where we look at, and that one has a few different kind of complex facets to it. Right now we have about 800 Portland police officers. That's our number. The studies that have been done, and for comparable cities, we should actually have about 1,300. So that's a massive difference, right? And we're funded to have 880 currently by the city, but because of retirements, because of recruitment, because of these issues, we're having a hard time even keeping up at the 800 level. And certainly Portland Police and the Mayor's Office, they've been trying lately to improve that, but we're in this situation where we're understaffed, and we're feeling it as a community, without a doubt. I mean, any one of us, if we walk outside right now, we see an incident, and we call the police, I think all of us have a question. Is it going to take 5 minutes, or is it going to take 5 hours? And that's not a place we want to be. We want to be able to count on our law enforcement having the resources necessary to respond to that. And right now, we are 1 or 2 critical incidents away from it being 5 hours. And I know, because I've been out knocking on doors throughout the county, it's a regular occurrence that people are experiencing, and it's not a place that makes us feel comfortable or safe when that's our reality.
So the repeal of Measure 110, is that going to help us with this open air drug use? Is that really going to make a measurable impact even at current policy? And also like to get your thoughts on drug courts.
Yeah. So here's what I'll say is, Potentially, yes. Next Tuesday is going to have a huge impact on whether that's going to change anything or not here in Multnomah County, because who you elect as district attorney is going to massively influence which direction we're going to go. And the reason I say that is that, what happened is with Measure 110, we decriminalized, the hard drugs, fentanyl, heroin, methamphetamine, cocaine. Those are the big ones. And so now that with HB 4002, we have an opportunity to kind of start to get back into, hopefully, what we're talking about, getting rid of the open air use, actually doing the work. But I'm going to tell you very clearly, I was shocked last week when Mike Schmidt went to the county commission and we were talking about the next year's budget. He went through the entire budget kind of with the county commissioners. Certainly they put out on there some of the challenges, and the county commissioners asked him at the end, they said, hey, so you got this recriminalization and all this stuff, but you didn't ask for a single dollar, not $1 in your budget to actually deal with this. And he said, yeah, that's right. And they said, well, why not? He said, I think it'll be like 150 cases a year. And I literally almost fell out of my chair because I was like, we could walk outside and we could probably pick up 150 cases right now. That same week, Portland Fire responded to 195 overdoses that same week. So when we talk about, is this going to potentially have an impact? Is it going to change things? Yeah, it matters who your DA is. Because I can tell you, he has zero plans to deal with this. Zero. And the way I look at it is, I hate to be cynical, but I'm gonna step into the cynical world for a second and say, he took $30,000 from the Drug Policy Alliance, who are avowed for decriminalization, and then he saw the polls that across Multnomah County that said about 70-80% people wanted actually to get away from Measure 110, get back to criminalization, get us back involved. So he literally stabbed them in the back, but then all of a sudden, he took another $30,000 from them. And then, so now he's up to $60,000 plus from the Drug Policy Alliance. He walks into Multnomah County Commission and doesn't ask for a single bit of funding to do any work in this area. I'm sorry, but I look at that and I believe he has zero intention of actually being involved in this. And I have every intention of being extremely active, looking at how do we get our community to a healthy place, to a place where children can go to parks, can walk from the bus to school, employees can come downtown and feel like, hey, I'm not having to step over 4 people that are passed on fentanyl. And most importantly, we can get to a place where we can actually help individuals, that we don't have to see people dying in our community at just horrifically record rates. We can actually help people. I believe that we can, but you have to have a DA that believes that.
Some of these hotspots we were talking about, the shootings over on the east side and obviously, homeless and drug use. Are there currently enough security cameras to assist in this? Is there anything in the current budget that you saw that will help assist with, finding these criminals?
I always believe we can do more in this area. This is something that we've been talking about. Thankfully there's other individuals like Mark Wells has been talking a lot about this and creating better connections. And this is where, again, if you have an active DA, and this is something I talk about often, which is if you have an active DA who believes that they are kind of the center of the wheel and that those spokes of that wheel go out to law enforcement, they go out to the jails, they go out to the community-based organizations, they also go out to the business community and they work with the security companies. And in that, you do things like create a network where you can actually make sure that you have cameras in the right place to protect businesses and to see when shootings occur, how you do that. There's been some massive advancements actually in some of our smaller communities that I think we could see a lot of opportunity here. I know Gresham has done a lot of great work with their drone response program that can respond to a shooting area immediately with a drone. These are opportunities where we can really change the direction of this community, but we need leadership, we need that collaboration. And you need to have a leader that's willing to lean in and say, yes, I want to collaborate with not just community-based organizations, but with businesses, with the business community, with the security companies, a way that we can find out, because I want to see a community that feels like, hey, you're getting public safety and it's being delivered and you're able to feel like this is something that we can all be proud of. We're all chipping in. We're all a part of that solution.
Great. Well, Nathan, thank you. We're going to take some questions from the audience, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. I love questions.
Thank you, Jose. Appreciate it very much. This is for the end. This is a good question. What did you learn not to do working under DA Schmidt?
Oh, boy. Where to start? First, this is going to sound really basic, but you should not discriminate against your female employees. Sadly, I've watched that happen over and over and over with him, and I'm still in shock by it. To have a motivated workforce, your employees, you have to value them, treat them with respect, treat them equally. And it starts with some of the, I hate to say this, but even the most basic things, with just gender equality, treating folks, fairly. I mean, that one jumps out as one of the sharpest lessons I've seen, but I also have seen very much, which is something that it reinforced my own personal belief, which is you need to lead from the front. You need to be a leader that comes forward, that your employees can have confidence in, that, hey, he knows what he's doing. He's also here. He's here on the weekends. He's here doing the trials. He's someone that believes in our mission and is here to not just show up and issue some press releases, but he's here to actually dig in and do the work with us.
Yeah. But one of the legacies so far has been this exodus from the DA's department. How do you plan to get some of those employees back, or can you?
Well, it is absolutely a situation where, yes, I've had conversations with folks that have left. I would love for them to come back. There are some that I think there's a genuine interest. It has to be, again, that environment where they feel like, hey, this is a mission we can believe in. There is not a person sitting here right now that can quote me what the DA's office mission is and what our mission statement is. I guarantee you, because it's like a few paragraphs long, and there's no one in our office, I think, that could quote it. I can guarantee you, everyone right here, if you heard it, and I know one person in particular in the crowd would know what Mike Schrunk's mission statement was. It was always to do the right thing for the right reasons. And when you have a workforce that believes in that, you'll have people come back. The other thing I'm going to do, though, is we have a lot of great young attorneys in the office, but we actually need a training program. And so I'm dedicated to actually hiring an individual to be full-time and do that training program to help those young attorneys so that they don't feel like we're just throwing them out into the ocean without any help. And so it's that two-part approach.
I kind of have two questions that maybe we can meld into one here. One is, with this election coming, the national election between presidents, and let's say you mentioned if either one wins, there are riots, correct? And also with the PSU thing, how would you do it differently? I mean, looking back at 2020, if you were DA, or looking at it if you were DA during this most recent PSU unrest, how would you have done things differently?
Yeah, a lot of it comes down to the police are going to have their tactics and their approach. And yes, that is fully within their purview and how they do that. But if you have a good partner, you have the opportunity to come in and say, look, where I would have done it differently is said, I want you to be a lot more surgical in how you're doing this. There was a ton of opportunity, and police eventually got there. But where we should have started was, hey, these crowds of 1,000 people, guess what? You can meld in with them and go ahead and pick me out the individuals that are the leaders in the violence. Pick out the individuals that's building the Molotov cocktail. And those are the ones I want. You can make 100 arrests a night, and it probably won't move the needle if you're not arresting the right folks. If you arrest 10 that are the ones building that, we're going to see an end to this right away. And that's what it comes down to, is making sure that we are going after those individuals that are truly violent. But it takes forethought. In other words, when I become DA, it's not going to be that, hey, we're going to wait for an event to happen and then go, maybe we should do this. We're going to have those conversations right now, because sadly, this is a problem that's been allowed to fester, and we need a real solution that is planned out ahead of time to be like, okay, because we can see these things coming often, and to be like, let's put that plan into action right now. We've already put the parts in place. Go ahead and let's do this and be ready. and I'll have a team from my office ready to deploy and be out there involved, and we'll be ready to attack it when it comes up. Not be reactive, be proactive.
Would you say that's one of the keys to sort of rebuilding trust with the Portland and sheriff's?
Yeah, absolutely. What I see when we show a true interest and go to these events and we're there, that's how they get their confidence and trust. They know me because I've been to as many or more of these events than they have at times, individually. And so when they see our face, when they know, hey, this DA is here to roll up his sleeves and actually get in the mix of this and really be a part of the solution, you see a wild difference among the officers. It's not, hey, okay, I know I've got these procedures, these protocols I have to go through. They believe that all of a sudden we are all on the same mission, and we have this kind of joint approach that feels like this is a team and we're here to actually serve the city. And I've seen it firsthand when we come together, but I've also seen it destroyed when I've seen the DA come in and create chaos there.
Yeah. I like this question. The primary goal of the DA is justice. How will you balance prosecution, jail time with reform and treatment programs?
Yeah, the way that I try to describe this is that holding people accountable and being compassionate, those are not binary. The most successful I can be is to help individuals get out of the criminal justice system, right? So even those people that maybe cause 5, 10 cases, how I'm most successful is they stop, right? It's a matter of not just, hey, can I put them in prison for 2 years? Can I put them in jail for 30 days? It's how do I get them out of the system so that 5 years from now, they're hopefully being a productive member of society. And an example I like to give is, in 2019, back when we used to prosecute graffiti, I know that seems like a wild concept these days. I worked on this case, this guy named Marcus Gunther, and I prosecuted him. He had done a massive amount of graffiti issues. He was also heavily involved in heroin, and he had some life issues he was struggling with. So I sat down with him, I went through that, and I said, okay, you're gonna go to prison, but I'm gonna set it up with a treatment program inside of prison and give you a support network when you get out, and do a whole program. He wrote me recently and said, look, in 2019, I hated you. He said, today, I'm now married, I just bought a house, I've got my life together. And it's like, that's what we want. The reform piece of this is, I'm not here to say, look, Nathan as DA is going to come in and swing a giant sledgehammer and try to, send everyone to prison. That's not it. The true reform is how we create an accountable system that works to get people out of it. And it is sometimes accountability. Yes, it means there are some consequences for your actions, but it should always be with the goal of how do we create a healthy community, including getting that person out of the system to be a healthy member of the community. I'll put a big caveat there. If someone's violent, if we're talking murder, rape, serious violence, I'm going to stand up for those victims and for this community and say that person needs to go to prison. So I want to be clear with that. But in that whole social justice reform component, part of it, there's a lot of opportunity for growth.
Well, it seems like the dysfunction at the county and the city level has, sort of created this chaos, and, because of that, Governor Kotek has really had to step in and the drug policies and the homeless policies. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about the governor having to come in and?
It's frustrating to watch. I think I share that with many people here and throughout the community, is that we need a functioning system. And what the reality is, the county plays a massive role in what we experience. And the city also has this massive role. And what we've seen is when they're at odds and going in different directions, when one is handing out tents and the other is trying to clean them up, it just causes a wild dysfunction. And for me, my role as district attorney is I believe I sit in a unique position in that, yes, I'm funded the budget by the county, but I'm independently elected. And I also then work with all the city police officers and the county commissioner, the city commissioners and the mayor. So I think I have that opportunity to help build a bridge. I'm never going to be able to say I alone will be able to repair this, but I believe that you can either be a part of the solution or you can be a part of the problem. And I'm going to be a part of the solution to help bring things together.
Just a couple more questions, because we appreciate your time, know how valuable it is. You've been on the campaign trail for quite a while.
Yes.
How will you work with the county commission to address the budgetary issues?
Well, this is an interesting question that, and we are all about to face it. So of our county commissioners, we have 5 county commissioners, as we know. 4 of those are up for election. So I believe this is a huge opportunity for us. I've already been out, talking, working with those individuals. Certainly I see some massive changes coming. With our chair, Jessa Vega Peterson, I'm more than happy to work with her. I want to see a realignment of priorities. And my hope and my belief is this community and this county is ready for those changes. And the 4 that are coming forward that I'm hopeful of, the ones that will be elected, I think we're in for a reset of priorities, and that's what I want to see.
We all would love to see that. Finally, we've got this podcast, and this is going to go out to all of the people out there very soon. You can give 30 seconds, just tell them why they should vote for you and what changes they should anticipate should you take over office. Yeah.
Well, I think first and foremost, I'm going to stay positive and say this. This is an amazing, beautiful community. You have so many people that are invested in seeing all the wonderful parts of Portland thrive. Is it arts? Is it culture? Is it business? Restaurants? All of our, lovely, political activism community. People are invested here. But we've gotten to a place where sadly, it feels at times very dysfunctional. And the only way that we're going to get on a path to getting back to feeling healthy, safe, is to make some changes. And the time for change is now. And it starts, and I think we've started to feel that in our community. We've certainly seen a lot more folks show up and come out and say, hey, we want something different than what we've gotten for the last 4-5 years. It absolutely, on May 21st, you have a huge opportunity to say, we need change, and this change, it starts, your first opportunity with the district attorney's office to say, we want some real practical, pragmatic experience to come forward. And then from there, we have a major election in November to really also shape that. And I'll let you know that when elected here next week, that's not the end for me. I believe that I need to collaborate and work and push to continue this message of change to get us back towards that really healthy place that I know that we all want to get to. So it starts next Tuesday, but I need you to come out and vote.